You didn't think I was here? I'm here. All right, so what are we doing now? We're gonna actually discuss a skill called the OPCVL. So you might have heard about it before, maybe if you talked to some kids from last year, some seniors. If not, I'm here to tell you what the OPCVL is. This is a skill that not only are you gonna do this year, but this is a skill that historians use all the time. You're not gonna find a professional historian say, oh, I was doing a little OPCVLing in my last book, right? They're not gonna do that. But they're doing it really all the time. They just don't talk about OPCVL the way you and I will for the International Baccalaureate History course. So, what is this skill? When am I gonna use it? Let's start with when you're gonna use it. You guys will be doing the OPCVL in 2 spots. You'll be doing it on and off all year. But it's one in your HI, your historical investigation, which you started last year and will finish this year. One whole section of the HI is OPCVL. We do OPCVL with 2 sources in the HI in that section 1. Besides the HI, you're all going to be doing OPCVL or using the skill on the May exams. In paper 1, you know, IB likes to use the term paper 1, paper 2, paper 3. You and I would call it exams, all right? But let's use their terminology. On paper 1, you get some sources. It's like a source-based question. One of the 4 questions that you do with the sources is the OPCVL. So is it important? Oh, you bet. This is super important. So we're hopping on the train. We're getting on board right in the beginning. It's like class 2 in September. We're hopping on board. Because the more we know how to do it, it's really pretty easy when you hear it, when you first start to look at it, you're like, oh, that's easy, I can do that. The more you practice it though, the better you get. Even if you hear it on this class time frame and you say, oh, that's easy. It's probably that you're doing them well and you're doing them okay right from the beginning, but just okay, just doing it well or mediocre, not what you want. IB looks for thoughtful responses. You want to, when you have done this on a source or 2 sources in your history course, you want it to be a thoughtful response. Some of it's given to you, like the first one, this origin is going to be given to you. The rest, you have to really think. You're doing a little bit of speculation, a little bit of using good thinking skills. IB looks to you to give them a response that's thoughtful. It might not always be that you can have this exact. Yours might look different from someone else's, but it could still be graded or scored equally well based on the thoughtfulness of your response. So, all that aside, what in the world is the OPCVL? Well, here it is. Let's talk about what the letters are. O is for origin. Let's write it in. Origin. P is for purpose. Purpose. C for content. We all love that word. I know you use that word a lot. Content. And then these are kind of like your base of what you're going to be doing. Down here is key ingredients. Because for these 2, you're going to be using these to get to this. Down here is values and limitations. So values, limitations. Feel free to be recording this, what I have up here, right in your notebooks as you're watching the video. Take a few notes, always a good idea. All right, so what do? What we're actually doing when we do the OPCVL skill, we are evaluating a source. That's what this is. So I look to the source and I find out, what's the origin of this source? Where is it from? What is the purpose of this source? If this is a cartoon, what was the cartoonist's intent? Why did he make or draw this cartoon? Why does he have the caption the way it is? What's his purpose? If this is like a speech by a president, an inaugural address or some other kind of speech, what was the purpose of giving it, right? Content, you don't have to do a whole lot with until you get down here because content is literally what is in the source. The content is given to you. Hopefully, you can understand it and you can interpret it, but it's there. The content is within the source. So origin given to us, we have to look, that's pretty easy. Where did this thing come from? Where was it published? What is the date of this thing? Literally, if I used a source taken from somewhere else, where did I take it from? Is it from Gale? Is it from a reference encyclopedia? Is it out of the JFK Presidential Library? Where is it from? What's the origin? What is the purpose? We're doing some speculation here. Why do I think? I have to use my thinking skills. A source isn't going to have a few lines saying, oh, you know, the purpose of this speech by President John F. Kennedy was, no one's going to tell you that. You have to think. What do I think that this president said this for? Maybe it's a cartoon. Why do I think the author, what do I think his intent was? If this is an actual book written by a historian, what do I think the purpose was? I have to speculate a little bit on purpose. Then I'm going to kind of just know that I've read the content of the source. I'm going to hang on to this. When I get down here, this is really critical. Guys, I'm like doing a double star. I should probably do a triple. Let's do it. Triple star, triple asterisk. Important stuff, because this is where we get to the meat of the OPCVL. This is where you, as the student or as the historian, say, what are the values of using this source and what are the limitations of using this source? But there's a key phrase. I don't want you to forget this phrase. I really want you to hear this and maybe mark this phrase down in quotes. Always, when you think about your values and limitations, always, 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 two things. One, think this phrase. If I am a historian studying this topic, then what are the values and limitations? So for instance, let's say I decide to use the Gettysburg Address. I have to immediately be thinking after I read the address. I have to be thinking, if I'm a historian studying the Civil War, what is the value of using Lincoln's Gettysburg Address? What are the limitations of using this address? Definitely, since these are words right out of Lincoln's mouth, and it was such an important event that he spoke at, clearly there's going to be some value to using this source if I'm writing about the Civil War. But there could be some limitations. Limitations. I paused for a minute because I'm thinking maybe you are already thinking in your mind, oh yeah, you know what? This isn't a report or a recording from a reporter of what happened that day. This is like the speech of the president. He wrote it. Could there be some issues with using Lincoln's own words? And what would those limitations be for me using it as a historian studying the Civil War? I have to ask myself, could there be better sources? I'm writing about the Civil War. Maybe I do want to use the Gettysburg Address. Maybe I don't. Maybe there are other sources that are better because there's too many limitations for this one. Or it could be that even with its limitations, I find it valuable to be using this source. There's a lot I can learn from it. But you can bet I'm also going to be using some testimony from soldiers who fought in the Civil War. You can bet I'm going to be using some politicians who lived at the time and looking at what they debated about in Congress, looking at what they wrote in their own personal journals. I've got a ton of sources to use. All right? So, remember we said for values and limitations, there were two important things. One was to use that key phrase. If I'm a historian studying this topic, whatever the topic be, what are the values and limitations of using the source? The other key thing that's super important for values and limitations is I gotta link it. I gotta connect it to what's up here. So it's kind of like these get directly connected to this. Crazy arrows all over the place. Hopefully you picked that up. I want to say, maybe, what are the values of the purpose of this source? Maybe there's a ton of value to the content in this source, but I might find the origin is limited. Maybe I got some really great stuff or values for these two, but maybe the origin was limited. Maybe the origin is limited because this isn't really from a historian with credibility. What if I picked up this source and I find, oh, you know what? Bummer. I realized a little later this was written by, you know, some high school kid for their history project, and I used it. The origin, not probably the greatest, so I got a limitation there. What if I'm working with another source? What if I'm working with, let's take for example, I'm working with a book that a person wrote because he's just interested in history, but he's really not a credentialed historian. He's maybe not, you know, on the faculty of Harvard University or Yale University. I may find that I've enjoyed his book, and the value is that this guy's book has incredible amounts of photographic material, and he's got all kinds of charts and statistics that make my argument strong, I might find that this guy has some values to his source, but maybe a limitation is, you know what, the content, besides those charts and graphs, content a little weak. Maybe he just did a basic summary of the event, and, you know, I need more. Then I would say if he just did a basic summary, I might be saying to myself, you know, love those charts and graphs he had in there, love those stats, but it's such a basic summary, I could have gotten that. I could have went online. I could have went Google, what is this summary of this event? I could have went to an encyclopedia, and I could have gotten that info. So I would find then that the limitation is in the content. This particular guy, not being really a historian who's been around a long time and has studied and has a PhD, his content might be limited, but there might be some value in some of the other things. Maybe the purpose is the value. So what do I need to know? When I'm evaluating a source, I need to take the source after I've read it and I feel that I understand the content. I need to say, okay, where's this thing from? And I need to state out directly, the origin of this source is. I know some of you are such creative writers, you hate doing formulaic types of things, formulas. Guess what? In this instance, you got to kind of do the formula. IB wants you to say, this is the origin, this is the purpose. There is a value of content, there's a value of purpose, there's a limitation of origin. If you are not using their language, you've got a problem. When an IB scorer is reading your exam, they want to be able to see the purpose of this source is. The value, there's a value of content, and it is this. There's a limitation of origin. This was written too close to the event. It was written 2 years after the event, and I find that limited. I might want to see some accounts that are written 10 and 20 and 50 years after the event because they provide perspective, you see? So you want to state right out using their language. Even if you think it's formulaic, just drop that and do it because they want to see the language. State the origin, state the purpose. You're speculating here. What do you think is the purpose? Use some good thought. We're not using anything with this till we get down here. What are the values? If I'm a historian studying this topic, what are the values of using this source? What are the limitations of using the source? And I want to connect these two to origin, purpose, and content if I can, whenever I can. Okay? So here's our OPCVL. Now, that all sounds pretty easy. I know it does. You're thinking, I got that, I can do that. Okay, it's on, people. It's on. Let's practice a little bit and see how you do.